Greetings and welcome, I'm Ash, and this is my review for The Binding of Isaac Afterbirth. It turns out I was right back in my Afterbirth release article, which I'll link below. I mentioned how even after a few hours of play, I could confidently say that this is an excellent piece of DLC. And now, after some 20 or so odd hours of play later, I can even more confidently restate that. Every aspect of gameplay has received some improvements, from simple things such as new items, room layouts and enemies, which shake up the usual flow of a run, to more obvious additions like the new greed mode and daily challenges. You see, in Rebirth, most people gave certain items, say like little planets, soy milk and so on, a wide berth because they either made your life miserable or they simply removed whatever cool synergy you had going on and just replaced it with their own garbage one. With Afterbirth, this issue is mostly fixed, as there are now a lot more item combos that can work to your benefit, even if the items that go into the combo are weak or annoying at their own. For example, in Rebirth, if you had Brimstone, an item that allows you to belch a laser beam across the room, new combo items that you picked up would most likely not give you a benefit, but would almost always give you their negative effect, which pretty much meant that people avoided picking up cool items that have potentially negative synergies. Now, in Afterbirth, you can pick up some crazy combos. On my second run as Azazel, I found my reflection, which means the tears fire a smaller distance and turn back to you, rubber cement, your tears, or in this case my laser beam, bounce off the wall, one of those wiggling worms that curve your shots, and finally, Tammy's head, an item that allows you to shoot your tears in all cardinal directions. In the base game, this combo would still be very powerful, but it would also be very boring because only Tammy's head would really work with it. But in Afterbirth, this might be the most ridiculous thing I've seen in a while. With each use of Tammy's head, I would turn into what I can only describe as a kraken, with my laser tentacles spreading across the room, flailing at anything in their path, completely obliterating rooms within seconds. Obviously, not all of them are going to be game-winningly powerful, but they will always be there in order to make future playthroughs much more interesting. While on the topic of items, it is worth mentioning that despite not actually being nerfed, the Devil Room deals are now on average less powerful because your odds of getting a tier 1 item have gone down with the addition of new ones. And out of these new items, many are strong, but they are not strong enough to allow you to breeze through the game on their backs alone. Whether this was intended as a nerf or not, I'm not sure, but it is a step in the right direction because the Devil Room items have a tendency to completely homogenize a run, but given their power level, you always felt obligated to go for them. On the other spectrum of divine dealings, the Angel Rooms, besides the new items, have gotten a very needed buff in the form of infinite chests. These chests seem to contain a decent amount of consumables and potentially items, which I haven't gotten any so far, and can be reopened as many times as you're willing to spare keys. Obviously, the only times I've ever actually gotten to see them has been with a handful of keys to my name, so I can't say for certain if they will be very influential. But anything that might push people towards the Angel route every once in a while is a welcome addition, especially now that there are item rewards for beating Mega Satan, who requires key pieces from Angel Rooms. If you are thinking that the new items and item effects make the game easier, the Afterbirth enemies are here to tell you that this is completely wrong. Enemies are mostly variations of current ones with their danger factor turned up a couple of notches. There are now colored versions of old bosses which work in a plus-minus sort of fashion. The boss gains an ability or extra enemies during the fight but loses either health, damage or some other effect. The scariest of these recolored bosses from what I've seen so far is the grey or blue, I'm not actually sure what color he is, Haunt, which comes with 4 little haunts that attack you at the same time. So if you thought fighting the Haunt on floor 1 was hard, then you haven't seen anything yet. To be fair, I'm not actually sure if he can spawn on the earlier floors or not, since I've only ever met him in the chest, but I wouldn't be surprised, this is Isaac after all. Your delicious tears fuel the game. Naturally, there are new bosses as well, my favorite of which would be the Hush, a new optional boss you can fight after the Mom's Heart fight. You can guess how strong the boss is just by the fact that before you fight him, you get 4 golden chests and 2 item rooms with a choice of items inside, completely free, just standing in the open. And if you guessed very hard, you are on the right track, but you are thinking way too small. The Hush is not very hard, the Hush is insanely hard, but it's not actually unfair in its difficulty, which is commendable. The whole fight plays off like a shoot-'em-up game, with you being constantly forced to run around and dodge enemy bullets while still somehow finding room to attack the boss itself. It is possible to get through the entire fight without taking a single bit of damage if you are good enough. or in my case if you're lucky enough to have a halo of flies protecting you. While I don't see myself going for him very often after I've unlocked all the items he has, I like him being there as an extra challenge for those super powerful characters. Much like how doing boss rush feels like a victory lap rather than something you need to do. The changes to the level design come on two fronts. Firstly, new room shapes which allow for some more interesting encounters to take place, and secondly, the added level variations such as the burning basement or the dank depths, and no, I don't mean the meme kind, which help increase the diversity of the stages themselves. From what I've noticed, the new level variations appear randomly and are usually quite harder than the normal counterparts. For example, in the burning basement, many enemies are lit on fire, which makes them more aggressive, as well as more durable, which is a feature of fire I've never realized and apparently lived without for so long. Sadly, some of the difficulty comes from graphical issues rather than gameplay hurdles, especially in the case of the burning basement. If you get unlucky and end up with the Curse of Darkness and the burning basement at the same time, you pretty much have to go into the options and raise the gamma, or you won't be able to see anything due to the dimmed light and smoke effects. I really do hope this gets fixed as soon as possible, because I can see it being really nightmarish for people who aren't as skilled as I am in the secret technique of increasing the gamma. On the other hand, while room layouts don't actually change enemies, the different room sizes and shapes definitely have an effect on how powerful enemies can be. Small, tight rooms can make attack flies go from a mild annoyance to a massive threat. Long, narrow corridors seem especially designed for exploding enemies in mind, and L-shaped rooms can make the entire process of entering a room a tactical decision in its own right, since you don't want to show up in the middle of a room, but you don't want to clear extra rooms if you are wounded. To counterbalance this new rise in monster power, Afterbirth has made it so that big rooms, the really big ones, give 2 charges to your spacebar item rather than 1, which is a most welcome change. If you were taught that the standard Isaac run simply takes too long, then Afterbirth has you covered with a new greed mode and daily challenges. The daily challenge, as the name would imply, is a preset seed that changes on a daily basis and is shared across all Isaac players, who then compete to be the very best on the leaderboards. Your position on the leaderboard is determined by what items you've taken, the rooms you've explored, how much damage you received, and naturally, how fast you finished the run. I didn't think I would enjoy this mode very much when I first heard about it. However, since you can only attempt it once a day, it presents a nice way to challenge your Isaac skills without actually wasting a lot of time. Greed mode, I was almost certain I would enjoy. It is essentially a faster, more action-packed version of Isaac, where you have to weigh risk against reward in order to get through it with the biggest payout and least health lost. In Greed mode, you start in an arena surrounded by an item room that requires a key, a free item room, a curse room, and a shop. The item rooms ensure that you have a baseline level of power, but it is the shop that is the focus of Greed mode. Since enemies don't drop health, you'll have to use the coins they drop to restore yourself while still somehow saving up enough money to buy the shop items, which draw from the entire pool of items, devil and angel rooms included. And if you aren't happy with the shop selection, you can usually pay a couple of coins at a machine to have them re-rolled. As far as the actual gameplay is concerned, it all starts when you step on the switch in the middle of the room. Once pressed, it will spawn 8 waves of enemies, with each wave coming either after a set timer, which is a lot shorter than you would expect, or after you've cleared out all the enemies, ensuring that there is a constant pace of action going on. If you find yourself overwhelmed, or simply clumsy like I am, you can walk over the switch in the middle and take a bit of health damage in order to stop enemies from spawning until you walk over it again. It is not something you want to do often, because every point of damage you take is going to cost you between 3 and 5 coins to fix, but if you are in a pinch, it is your last resort, and get used to using it, you will sometimes have to. Finally, once you're done with the 8 monster waves, you get to fight the 2 boss waves, and after that, the optional devil wave. The devil wave is usually much harder than both the bosses and the mobs before it, but it rewards you with a guaranteed devil or angel room. From my numerous runs, I've come to realize that it is the best practice to take the devil waves early on while they're still relatively easy, and then completely ignoring them later when they are really difficult, and any sort of payoff you receive would be instantly negated by all the health you lost. At the culmination of Greed mode is the Ultra Greed fight, one of the better animated and more fun bosses to fight. He is hard, that is true, but he is nowhere near as hard as a Hush is, which makes sense since you will probably meet Ultra Greed with relatively low HP. The fight, as you would imagine, revolves around coins. Besides simply throwing them at you, Ultra Greed's eyes periodically turn into a slot machine, and if two of the same symbols appear, the room will be littered with corresponding coins. These are either key coins, heart coins, or bomb coins, and each of those is dangerous in their own way. The keys, if left alive for long enough, will open the doors at the side of the arena, unleashing dozens if not hundreds of little greeds on you. And you really do not want this to happen, so make sure you clear out all the keys, or at least as many as possible. The hearts, on the other hand, are not very problematic. If left alone, they will heal Ultra Greed up, but the heal isn't that significant, so if you're going to skip out on dealing with any of these, make sure you are skipping out on hearts and not the other ones. And finally, the bomb coins. These are fairly annoying since they are far more numerous than the other two, and as you would imagine, if left alone for long enough, they spawn a whole lot of explosions. If you want my advice for the fight, make sure you clear out all the coins that drop, at least the threatening ones. Make sure you clear out all the extra enemies on the screen, and simply stay at range and stay safe. This fight is going to take a while, you just need to make sure that you survive longer than the boss does. And once you finally defeat Mr. Ultra Greed, you are presented with two things. First, a chest, which just ends the game, and secondly, a donation machine whose purpose is so far undiscovered. Interestingly though, the donation machine caps out on 109 coins exactly, which just so happens to be the item ID for money equals power. This obviously is not a coincidence, but the real question is, what is this hinting at? This donation machine thing, along with the fact that the community together has only so far discovered about 50 or so items and hasn't found the extra late game floor yet, has led to a massive hunt for secrets as people are trying to figure out what exactly is happening here. And this time around it doesn't appear data mining will help, because people have gone through the entire game and its code and they have not found anything. So either the items are not there and are awaiting a patch, or they are simply extremely well hidden. Whatever this ends up being, I simply love watching these sort of events unfold. It is great to see a community just come together and try to solve these sort of secrets with absolutely insane methods, which, strangely enough, sometimes end up working. So whatever the end result is, at least it's gonna be fun. So what exactly are my final thoughts on the game? Well, the new items and item combinations have brought a fresh breath of air into the game. Items that are once absolutely awful now have a few synergies that can make them quite good in certain situations. To offset this increase in player power, Afterbirth has added some more challenging enemies and room layouts, which produce some very tense moments into what otherwise would be just standard room-to-room progression. The two new game modes, Green Mode and the Daily Challenge, are a great boon for players who wanted a more compact, action-oriented version of Isaac. They have their own strategies and metagame which differ greatly from what you would usually do in the standard game, which is great for the variety. It might look like I'm giving it too much unneeded praise, but really this is just Rebirth with enough new things added and old things changed to keep it fresh and interesting for a whole while longer. This does however mean that if you did not enjoy The Binding of Isaac Rebirth, then you are most likely not gonna have your mind changed in Afterbirth. But for the rest of us, this is one solid expansion and I can fully recommend it. Thank you guys for listening and I wish you a nice day. See ya.